Y'all recognize that one? Well, by the way, I use my walk. I'm a woman man. No time to talk. Come on, y'all. It's another one bites the dust. What's cracking, y'all? What's cracking, peeps? What's the vibes? What's the vibes? What are we going for? Well, howdy. There's usually when I start these things, no one's here, but people jump in as we go. So welcome. We got one. So welcome and howdy to anybody who may be watching this later. If you're new to these streams, because this is only my third one, let me fix this camera a little bit. Basically, how this thing goes is the first half, I got some flow related topics to go over. And the second half is tricks, basically tutorials. Although if you're in the chat, you can feel free to jump in and ask questions, or we could go over or talk about whatever the heck you want, because that is why I'm here. And if you're wondering why I got my shades on, it's because my future's too bright. Now, really, I feel like when I'm streaming, I'm looking at the chat, I'm looking at the screen, I'm checking everything, and my eyes look like they're bugging out. So I like to have the sunglasses on. But yeah, if you are not interested in hearing about flow-related topics and you are watching this later, skip in about halfway and you can get right to the tricks, because we got some bangers we're going through this time. Mostly tricks that I don't really see, especially over here in the States, because I do feel like as far as Dragonstaff goes, I see very different common tricks between what we're doing here in the States and what I'm seeing overseas. So with that all being said, I like to start with some shout outs. I'm going to shout out my mama and my daddy, and shout out to my lovely partner, and shout out to whoever left this hat on an airplane, because I found it underneath the seat. So we definitely had the same taste, if you will. And I want to shout out One Plant, a dispensary out in Antioch. If you're in the Bay Area or Contra Costa County, highly recommend showing them some love. I got to spin some fire there last night, and I think I will also be spinning some fire there this coming Friday and the Friday after, and as many Fridays as I can before I got some weekends that I'll be out of town in April. And shout out to the folks over at Ninja Pirate. I always got to shout them out, because really I do not feel comfortable spinning specifically fire staffs, whether it's Dragonstaff or contact staff, if it's not made by Ninja Pirate. That's for a number of different reasons, but they just did it right. They got the perfect design. I want to shout out the folks over at Fire University Santa Cruz. If you don't know, that is where I first ever spun fire. And although I have not been in a while, the place is very near and dear to my heart. I'd say the Lighthouse in Santa Cruz might be my favorite place that I have ever been to. I always have good experiences there, and I just love the people there too. I also want to shout out the folks at the Ninja Pirate Spintensive last year, Mr. McPhil, Miranda, Chris, Sparkles, Living Room, Camp Living Room. That's what we're calling it. I can talk. Camp Living Room. And shout out to the Mad Catter as well, and Lady Pyromancer, and everyone else there that I am forgetting to name right now. If you are not following or familiar with TJ the Mad Catter on Instagram, I highly recommend giving him a follow. If I had to pick one all-time favorite flow performance or flow sesh that I have seen in person, it would be one of his contact staff burns at the Ninja Pirate Spintensive last year. Of course, there's no video of it because that's how it goes, but all around, the skill, the playfulness, the musicality, everything about it was absolutely perfect to me. even when the staff dropped, it just magically bounced off the ground and back into his hand. The entire thing was magical, and I still think about it to this day. Let's see. I also want to shout out to the festivals that compensate their teachers and performers. That's not you, FAI. Sorry, y'all. I don't mean to keep dunking on FAI, but it's too easy, so I got to. And you know, shout out my cats and shout out your cats too, because I didn't know I could love cats so much, but I fucking love my cats. So shout out your cats too if you love your cats. And I think that's all the shout outs for this time. Hope you don't mind. I am sipping on my Carla Rossi sangria. It's my only vice these days. I have quit everything else. I am clean and sober outside of this wine and my 1 cup of coffee a day. I'm down from 3 cups of coffee a day to 1 cup of coffee a day, and eventually that's going to go 2 because your boy got high blood pressure. I wonder why. And so I wanted to start off by giving a little bit of plugs here to other Patreon creators, because I've made, let's see, I made my Patreon, I think 2020. And I ran that for about a year before switching over to my website, RIP. I did that for about a year, and now I've been back on Patreon for another year or two. And during my first year of Patreon, I know this is going to sound toxic, but I'm just keeping it real with y'all. I definitely saw other Patreons specifically if they were teaching the same props as me as, I guess, competition. And one day when I got a new subscriber on my Patreon, I went over to their profile to send them the welcome message, as I always do. Gosh, people, check your Patreon messages. What the heck? And when I went over to their profile, I could see other Patreons that they were supporting, and they were also supporting another Dragonstaff Patreon creator. And that's when it clicked for me that we are not necessarily in competition. Some people got the finances to support every dang Patreon, and if I did, I would too, because I do believe that's one of the best ways that you can support your favorite flow artists or fire performers these days. A lot of us work other jobs to pay the bills. A lot of us don't make money from teaching or performing. And a lot of us, even though you might see us pop up with the cool profile picture that we're teaching at this festival or whatever, those festivals more often than not are not compensating us either. Shout out FAI. So sorry, I'll stop with the FAI. But so I do think that one of the best ways that you can support other flow artists, even if you don't necessarily watch their tutorials, is by subscribing to their Patreon. So I want to shout out some other Patreon creators. If or when I am financially able to, I am 100% going to be hopping on Fabio's Patreon. If you are not familiar with Fabio, I don't know how you aren't, but he is the creator of Flobanachi, who makes these beautiful Dragonstaff heads here. And he is also one of the GOATs when it comes to Dragonstaff tech. So I do plan on eventually jumping on that Patreon as well. Another one, if you're looking for Dragonstaff or contact staff, is Mika, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Mika. Hopefully I'm not wrong. I want to say his Instagram is Mika Hell. I should probably just pull my phone out and double check, but I don't want to be distracting. If you are interested in hoop tutorials on Patreon, and I'm going to apologize in advance if I'm butchering y'all's names, because most of you I know from the internet, and I haven't heard your name spoken in real life to know it. But Tanuki Twirls, I think it is, Tanooki. They teach hoops on Patreon, as well as if you go to Instagram at @bmarie, she also teaches hoops on Patreon. And if you're looking for poi tutorials on Patreon. Bo Juggler has a Patreon that I would very much like to hop on as well. If you're not familiar with Bo, boy, are you missing out. If I hadn't seen him spin in person, I would be quite sure that he is AI because his juggling and his poise spinning is just on a whole nother level. I actually first seen him not on the internet, but at the Oakland Flow Jam. And I had never heard of him. I had never seen him before. And I was just like, what the heck? And I got to talk to him for a very brief moment and give him some compliments. And then afterwards, I seen him online and was like, oh, wow. Yeah, okay. This guy is next level. And I think anybody who's familiar with him knows that. Lastly, again, I don't know if it's pronounced Elena or Elena, but Elena Tinkerbella. They also have a Patreon, a little less flow related from what I could tell, but it's called Para Times, P-A-R-A Times. And that covers, sorry, I'm pulling out my phone on this one, covers psychology, hypnotherapy, and related sciences. So if that is sounding interesting to you, that is also a flow artist with a Patreon. I don't think there's that many of us, but if you are thinking about making one, I highly recommend doing it. Which reminds me, I didn't shout out the Patreon fam, so much love to the Patreon fam. As most of you probably know, I left my job at the airport probably over a month ago now, and I got a job as a school bus driver. But what I didn't know was that the first month of it would be unpaid training. So for the first time in my life, I can say I'm a full-time flow artist. And the only income I'm getting currently is from Patreon and from performing and teaching privates. So yeah, big love to the Patreon fam. And without further ado, I have some topics written out here to go over. One thing I wanted to talk about, because it's been a topic of discussion that I see come up over and over again throughout the years, and that is people calling out other people for stealing flow tricks. And boy, in one way I can relate. There's definitely a handful of tricks that I feel like I created. I haven't seen anybody else do them, and then I see someone else do it without any kind of shout out, and I'm like, hey man, that doesn't feel very good. But when it all comes down to it, I did the exact same thing. I do the exact same thing when I was learning, or when I'm learning any prop. I'm watching what I see people do on the internet, and I try to replicate it. And usually it is without any kind of credit or shout out. So you may have noticed that over the past year or so, I have done a better job when I am doing a new Dragonstaff trick. I do my best to shout out the person that I originally seen do it, if it's not one of those tricks that I see a whole bunch of people already doing. But the cold hard truth of it is, nobody owns tricks. And even if you think that you made up a trick, there might be someone somewhere who isn't online who's been doing it for a long time already. So as difficult as it may be, nobody owns tricks, and I don't think anybody should be calling people out for necessarily stealing tricks. Workshops, on the other hand, are a different story. Workshops are technically instructional material, which are copywritten by law. So I do not support people stealing workshops, especially if it's front to end, word for word, trick for trick. But yeah, nobody owns tricks. So I get the frustration that people have, but hey, welcome Dana, and welcome. I got a couple people in here now. If at any point y'all want to chat about anything or go over any trick, feel free to jump in the chat and let me know. I had like 2 other flow related topics here that I wanted to quickly go over before we jump into some tricks. One of those is, I'm not going to get into it too much because I could talk about it all day, but that is how flow festivals in particular choose their instructors. And from my findings and some inside knowledge I've gotten, a big part of it is you being willing to teach without any kind of compensation. So that's all I want to say about that part. Another part of it is I've reached out to some Flow Festival organizers and kind of asked them, like, what's the deal? How do you guys go about this? And unfortunately, a lot of times I appreciate them being straightforward with me about it, but it comes down to Instagram and Facebook followers. So I went ahead and shared with them that I know of some flow artists who buy Instagram followers. Shame on you. No, I'm just kidding. I think it actually works out for them as much as it's kind of hard for me to respect. I think it actually kind of bypasses the whole game because gaining followers online is a long and slow uphill battle. And yeah, a lot of times they just look at follower counts and they assume that that will reflect how many tickets they can help them sell and how many people they can bring to the event. And if you're an event organizer, I totally understand that. But their minds were also kind of blown when I told them that I know of people that buy Instagram followers, and it kind of just flushes the whole thing down the toilet. So those are the main two factors that I can point to as far as getting accepted to teach at flow festivals. Oh, a third one, it's who you know. Let's be real. I've gotten plenty of teaching and performing opportunities based off of who I know. So I've benefited from that and I've suffered from that. So that's just, it is what it is. Let's see. Dana says, I'd love to hear about how you handle rejection from festivals to perform. It's been hitting me harder than I expected. Oof, yeah, I feel you on that. When I get an acceptance email, I literally get like a burst of energy and butterflies in my stomach. I mix stomach and tummy, butterflies in my tummy, and I feel like I can just run laps around the house because I'm so excited. So it is a really good feeling. Being denied by festivals, I'd be lying if I said it didn't bother me, because especially at this point, not to like toot my own horn, but just like taking myself out of flow arts and looking at the internet and Dragonstaff in specific. I do have the largest library of free Dragonstaff tutorials on the internet. And I also have a background in teaching yoga, and not a lot of instructors have a background in teaching outside of flow festivals. And then on top of running the Patreon and website for like 4 years now, I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm very qualified, and I don't really see Dragonstaff workshops being offered that I don't also offer. So yeah, sometimes it does bum me out. What makes me feel better about it is knowing, and maybe I'm just petty, but this is how my brain works, knowing that they are not willing to compensate me, because last year when I was willing to accept a free ticket, I got accepted to all but 1 or 2 flow festivals that I applied to. This year I only was willing to accept not even necessarily compensation, but I just wanted my travel covered, especially if I'm flying to another state. And I have been turned down all year long. But I guess to get back to your question, how I handle the rejection is I look at it as there's not much to lose if there's nothing to gain. So if I'm going to have to go into debt and pay out of pocket and get a flight and a rental car and food and gas and a ticket and all these things just to make it to the event and teach, then I'm really hurting myself as much as it feels good to be accepted and to get the cool profile picture and to kind of get the validation of being accepted. Those are, I guess, validation is a valuable thing, I guess, but I look at it as if I have to literally go into debt and then work a job that I hate to get myself out of that debt, it's not really worth it for me. So if they're not willing to at least travel my cover to, I mix those words up. I blame it on the wine. If they're not willing to at least cover my travel to be there, then I just don't look at it as a loss anymore. I'm kind of like, well, at least I don't got to go into debt for them. So that's my way of kind of rationalizing it and handling it. And I think at this point too, I've made a good amount of friends in the flow community to where I know that if there's someone that I really want to learn from, thank you. I see your response here. If there is someone that I want to learn from, and even if they're not your friend or you don't know them, more than likely, if you reach out to them and are willing to travel to them, or if they're willing to jump on Zoom and teach, you can probably just pay them for a private lesson and probably get a lot more out of it than you would at a festival. Because at a festival, the workshops are really limited. Like if I'm just teaching someone one-on-one, they can just tell me what they want to learn and we can go through it, even if it requires some tricks beforehand to get there. And it doesn't have to be like, in this hour, we're just going to learn traps or we're just going to learn fountains. And instead, we can kind of bounce all over the place and I can get literally every trick that I've seen them do that I want to learn. I can like get them all out of them in an hour or two. So I think it actually saves you money because you don't got to buy a ticket that's hundreds of dollars, and you also know that that person is getting compensated because you don't know if the festival is compensating them or not. And yeah, I think you can get a lot more out of it that way. So that's kind of what I want to do moving forward. I didn't shout them out at the beginning, but I meant to. A poi spinner that I really like, Mr. Knotts or Lucas. I got to meet him at Fire Drums last year, and I was watching one of his poi videos the other day, and I was like, I want to learn that. I want to learn that. And I just thought about it and was like, he's in Oregon, which isn't too far from me. I bet if I hit him up and just was like, hey, do you have a weekend? You'd be down to like kick it, and I'll throw you some money to teach me some stuff. I could probably just learn everything that I want to learn from him, and instead of in a class where he's got to kind of, help everybody, it'll just be one-on-one and a lot more focused. And like I said, I know that he's getting compensated and everything. So, and he's also super nice. So I'm just like, it just sounded like a fun time. So yeah, that's kind of my plan moving forward. Another thing I've been thinking is it'd be really cool to just like rent a whole bunch of campsites and just like post it online. Like, hey, if you don't want to buy a plane ticket and a festival ticket and all that, you can just buy a plane ticket or gas or whatever you got to do and come out to the campsite, and we can all just hang out and learn from each other all day, all weekend. And it'll be a lot less structured. Like I said, not like this hour we're going to do traps and this hour we're going to do chi rolls. But I find that at this point, I learn more just bouncing around to people at festivals that I see and be like, hey, how do you do that one thing? And instead of just going to workshops, that hour spent at a workshop, I can spend kind of hopping around and talking to people and getting a little trick here and a trick over there. And yeah, it's almost, I get really almost upset now when I go to a flow workshop and I don't learn a new trick, because I'm like, hey, I could have used that hour to just talk with people and learn whatever I wanted to learn. And instead I took a workshop and didn't learn anything. What the heck? But you don't really know until you're there and you're going through it. And yeah, they got other people there that probably are learning stuff. So it is what it is. And yes, exactly how you do it. Yeah, a big thing for me last year at festivals was when there wasn't a block where I wanted to take a workshop in specific, I would just bounce around and see people that also aren't in a workshop and kind of just geek out with them. And I learned a bunch of new tricks that I probably wouldn't learn at a workshop, because a lot of times the workshops too are geared towards maybe like a more beginner to intermediate level. And maybe somebody just has one really weird, crazy trick, and you're like, okay, how did you do that? And they're usually more than happy to show you. Obviously, if they're like with a group of people or their partner, or look like they're, in a conversation, I'm not going to go do that. But a lot of times festivals, people are more than happy. I know I am, to just geek out with someone who wants to learn something. Let's see, were there any more topics here that I wanted to go over? More importantly, Dana, since you're here, if there's any tricks that you want to go over, feel free to drop them in the chat before I jump into the random bullet points that I got here. Because with the live streams, I don't follow like any kind of particular order. Like, we're gonna do these types of tricks. I just kind of bounce around to random tricks that I want that I want to go over or haven't had a chance to make a tutorial for, or whatever the case. And let's see, I think, oh, I did have one more topic that I wanted to quickly go over for anybody who may be watching this later too, and that is just, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer to talk about fire safety, so I'm going to keep it quick, but I do just want to say, if you are spinning fire, to always check your clothes, make sure that they are a natural material, not like mixed fabrics and not like synthetic stuff like polyester and things. And it's not just because those things are dangerous and they'll burn really fast. It's also because a lot of them are really plasticky. And unlike cotton, cotton might just light on fire and you could take it off or it'll burn off. Plastic will melt into your skin. And that's going to be a much more serious thing. I see people do it all the time, and I'm not going to be the one to come at them like, hey, you shouldn't be wearing that. But I do think it's important, and I've seen plenty of people get messed up, so I got to put it out there. Another thing, I haven't always stuck by this, but I'm going to say it anyways. I don't ever recommend spinning fire without a safety. I have a couple of times, usually for performances, where I couldn't find a safety or couldn't afford to pay somebody to be my safety. So yeah, maybe I should practice what I preach, but accidents do happen even when I'm wearing totally organic materials that I've spun fire in 100 times. My very first routine that I performed in 2019, it's a routine that I had gone over probably 100 times. I wore clothes that I'd spun fire in many, many times. But of course, I wanted to freshly wash them so that I looked nice for the performance. And there must have been like a ball of lint or something in the pocket, because while I was doing a fountain, my pocket caught on fire. Luckily, I had safeties there to yell, pocket, pocket, and I could quickly wipe it out and it didn't interrupt the performance. But to kind of piggyback on that, I see sometimes, I mean, maybe people do have a safety there, but sometimes it seems like people post fire videos while they're just kind of spinning on their own in their yard and without a safety. And it just makes me so nervous, because in a situation like that, you wouldn't have somebody to call it out. And if the fire gets worse, it could be really dangerous. I remember one time in Santa Cruz, I saw someone's rope dart get wrapped around their boots, and we all kind of watched like to see if they were gonna unwrap it, and then next thing you know, their boots are melting, and we had to run up with the Duvetine and literally just suffocate their entire boots and rope dart. So it's one of those things where it's like, no matter how good you are, no matter how much you practice, no matter if you've tested your clothes and all that, accidents happen. And maybe it's just because one of my main inspirations for getting into fire dancing is Linda Farkas, and most of us know we lost her too soon to a fire performing incident, which from what I have gathered, it's not due to clothes burning and things like that, but more to the fumes from the smoke from the fire. I hope that is true, and I'm not just talking BS, because obviously I didn't know her, but that is what I've gathered from people who told me that they knew her. So again, no matter how good you are, accidents happen, and I don't want to see any more amazing flow artists go the way they lost Linda, because that still bums me out on a regular basis. And yeah, I'm gonna move on from the chats. And yeah, another thing quickly about fire safety is sometimes too, I see people spin just on like super dry leaves and stuff. And again, maybe they have a safety there, but from the video, it looks like they don't. And I'm just like, you got dry leaves under you, no safety. Like, this could go so bad so quickly. But hopefully they just had a safety and didn't mention it, and they weren't on camera, and it was all good. But it definitely makes me nervous. Okay, traps. Want to learn a new weird one. I like that. Let's see here. I'll move the camera a little bit. I do have a lot of traps. I can take off the glasses now because I feel like my eyes look like they're bugging out when I'm streaming and I'm looking all over the screen without sunglasses on. There it is. Okay, so one of my favorite kind of weirder traps, you might already know it. So if you do, please let me know. But it's something, I don't know if there's a name for it, but I call it like a chest elbow trap. This one here. And this is one variation of it. You can also do it with your hands in a prayer position, kind of behind the center point. I really like this one because I don't see it too often. I think this is like the classic trap that I think is so important to know, and I use it all the time, but I think most of us know it. And this kind of outer arm trap too, I think a lot of us know or can figure out. And okay, is that a yes that you want to learn it, or a yes that you already know it? Just to be sure, because I do have a couple of other weird ones. Trying to think here. It actually kind of goes off of this one. Okay. So if you do already know this one, I learned from Locke, I believe their name is, at Great Lakes Flow. You can also do this one kind of one-armed. So you come into that same trap going back and forth, and then at one point you can make it like a one-arm trap. And when you push the staff away, you can let the center point roll down the arm, just like it would in a forearm roll, and then pivot back to the side, press into the neck, and you're back in that trap position. So that's one kind of weird variation on that trap I've seen. I was messing with another trap earlier, but I couldn't get the staff to roll with it. So I don't know if I want to go with it unless you don't care about the roll. Some people don't care about the roll, and I didn't for a long time, but I got sick of the roll is religion people coming after me. So I was like, fine, I'll make sure I only do stuff with it rolling. Gosh. But this is one I actually saw from Mick Bill. And you can keep the staff. I have the center point kind of at the back of the neck. I'm not good with anatomy, but that kind of bony upper part of the spine, I want to say it's like C9 or something like that. I need to get better with anatomy. But that's where I have the center point at. And you can duck the head and just use your elbows to send it from one side to the other. Woo. And then back the other way. Ugh. It's a difficult one. It's definitely a weird one. Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, that one, like I said, it's hard. I bet you there's a way to get it rolling, and that's why I keep messing with it, because I want to get it rolling one day. But this is a weird one. I don't think I've seen anybody do it other than Mick. And that goes for a lot of tricks. Yes. And it would also, I think, translate really well to contact staff, because contact staff, you don't got to worry about the roll so much. But yeah, you could basically start with the center point behind your neck. And then I always start with my right side. That's just my dominant side. So you kind of have to keep your head ducked down to come into it. And then use the right elbow to press the right side of the staff in front of you to your left. And you want to let both ends of the staff pass over your head. And then you can raise the head and catch the end of the staff with your left elbow to come into the opposite side. Doing the same thing, only now you're pressing the left side of the staff in front of you over to the right. Both heads pass over your head, if that's not confusing. Both ends of the Dragonstaff pass over your head. That might be better. Ooh. It also really helps if you can kind of pivot the center point at the top of your back there. It's kind of a difficult thing to explain, I guess, but if I've seen people do it without a shirt on, and you can really see how like the shoulders are kind of helping to assist the staff to move. And that can be really helpful when you're getting it to go all the way to the other side, because you want both ends of the staff to pass over your head before you start it on the opposite side. There it is. Ooh, almost. Yay. And yeah, I've definitely smacked myself a bit with that one too. People always ask when they see me spin fire, like, I mean, people who don't spin fire, they're always like, have you burned yourself? Or like, how many times have you burned yourself? I'm like, yeah, a couple times, but not nearly as many times as I've probably given myself a concussion. Um, Especially when I was first trying to learn Jesus rolls. Instead of turning the way that I should be, I kept just turning right into the staff. And I probably smacked my chin like a dozen times before I just quit that move until somebody showed it to me. So instead of, I always come into it from my right side and then turn to the left. But for some reason, I really wanted to turn to my right. So I'd enter on the right side and then just bam, like over and over again until, yeah, I just decided it wasn't for me. Another time I was drinking and spinning fire, something I highly don't recommend doing. And I smacked myself so good. Usually, if I mess up a trick, I'm like, okay, I got to redo it until I get it. And I was just like, nope, done. Put it out. Next day, I had a giant bruise on my head. And anytime I like reached down to grab something, like huge headache, music felt like it was way louder than it was. Like, I'm pretty sure those are signs of a concussion. I saw somebody else jump in here. If there's any trick or anything you want me to go over, feel free to jump in the chat. And I hope you don't mind. I'm sipping on my sangria here. It's my only vice left, as I am currently a sober Sally outside of drinking wine, which take that as you will, but I have not always been. And I'm like over a month now. I'm not keeping track of the days like most people, but yeah, I'm over a month now with just wine and coffee. Okay, you're talking about the Jesus rolls? And you know, Mick Phil, I keep bringing him up. Mick Phil, besides Linda Farkas, is probably, I mean, he is like one of the main reasons I started spinning Dragonstaff, watching his videos on YouTube. But he posted a thing, I think last year. It was like a Jesus roll challenge, and it was like, how many, you know, like circles can you get with it? Because most of us can't get more than 2 like pirouettes or rotations before it kind of falls off. But yeah, if you are talking about the Jesus rolls, we could totally get into those. I gotta strap my hat on my head so it doesn't fall off. Well, you already know the entrance. It's basically coming into it from a halo. And Jesus rolls are another one where it's really tough to get the staff spinning. I guess that was, I should have mentioned, more part of the I'm mixing them up now. The Jesus roll challenge was how many spins can you get in with the staff still rolling? Because eventually it just wants to stop. But if you don't mind it stopping, then you could probably get more rotations in than if you're trying to keep it rolling. So I start from my right side. As soon as it gets to my left shoulder, I do a 180 to my left. And that is definitely where it becomes tricky. Making sure I'm not missing nothing in the chat. We'll do it one time to see. Okay, so a couple things to point out is back bends help a lot, I think, once it comes to the front side. And back bends are not my favorite thing in the world. That's one of the reasons I do yoga so much, is because back bends are so difficult for me, and if I'm not doing yoga, there's no way in hell I'm pulling off some of these tricks. Another thing that's very helpful is, especially when you're trying to get it to go all the way around, is there's 2 options. One is to have your arms out wide. It kind of gives you more surface areas so that you don't miss the shoulders, or so that if you do miss the shoulders, you still have some kind of surface to land on. And another way that I seen Linda Farkas do originally is kind of by having the hands near the shoulders and the elbows out. And then that way, when it lands on your shoulders or wherever, you kind of have your hands there to give it a little bump up and a little assist. Ooh, caught my shorts. So for that, I'm definitely using my left hand quite a bit. So coming from the right side to the left, I do a 180. And ideally, as soon as you do that 180, you want it to land on the right shoulder so that you can turn back to the side you started on to do a full 360. Ooh. Like I said, it's hard to get more than 1 or 2 pirouettes. I think that's what they're called when you do a full 360 in. Getting a little dizzy. So I'll turn around so that we're facing the same way. So especially once you get it to that kind of front side, if you're starting from the right shoulder to the left, like I am, and turning to your left, that left hand there helps a lot to have the left hand kind of in front of the shoulder or armpit. Ooh. I can almost even just keep my right arm down so you could see better that it's really the left hand doing the assisting. Ooh, I messed it up. And you know what? With the assisting hand, you could probably get more rotations out of it and keep it rolling. Yeah, the dizziness is real. Especially when I was learning them and I kept smacking myself in the head. It was like a combination of hitting myself in the head and turning that was just like my head was not having it. Hopefully that helped a little bit, because yeah, if you already know the technique for Jesus rolls, which if you're getting it to your front side, you probably do already know the technique, then I think from there it really comes down to, one, the back bend part so that it can pass over the front side of the body right there. Ooh, missed. And then that brings me to another point I was going to say is trying to make sure that it actually hits your shoulders and doesn't fall off. Ooh, lost the roll, but it's going. And I'm out of rolls. But yeah, that assisting hand can really help a lot, especially if you're trying to get like multiple pirouettes out of it and not just 1 or 2. And I'm using more of like the backs of the fingers, back of the hand, to kind of just give it a little bump up. I'll turn around, even though it might look opposite now, still going the same way. Lost it. Whew. And I guess another thing that can be helpful is just working on the turning, like the pirouettes. I usually keep like 1 foot. Yeah, you can see my feet. I usually keep 1 foot planted. So if I'm turning to the left, I keep my left foot down and just kind of step with the right foot, so that you're kind of just pivoting on the left ball of the foot or toes. I find that's a thing that I have to get into a lot with a lot of different Dragonstaff tricks involving like spins and pirouettes. Is a lot of times I have to be like, okay, let's set the staff down and just kind of work on this stepping motion. Because especially if you can just do like a full 360 balancing on the foot, it'll help with a lot of pirouette moves. Pardon. And whew, time is flying. I need to turn these into 2 hours because I never want them to end. But yeah, if there's any other tricks, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, I had a little bit of a crazy trick that I wanted to go over that I had written down. It's a trick that, it's one of those tricks that I like to think that I made up, but I'm sure somebody somewhere has done it 100 times for years longer than me. The only other person I've seen do it, I think, is Darnell Goodman. And I haven't met him in person, but he just seems like an awesome human being from our communications on the internet. And they're also just leveling up super fast. But that is a trick that I like to call the Kicky Flippy Leg Tricky. Ugh. Okay, I can do it better than that. Ooh, there it is. So that one requires a couple of prerequisites. I'll quickly go over them. First would be like a forearm roll, and I like to come into this trick from the left arm and then exiting onto the right leg. So you want to know your forearm roll with the left arm. And he said, I audibly just went, what? Yeah, it's one of those tricks where I did it by accident one day, and then like I had to, luckily I was recording, and I just rewatched the video until I could actually do it, like not on accident. But it basically comes from a forearm roll to a forearm roll trap, or I've also heard them called a slapback Joel. And I don't know who Joel is, but people will call these slapbacks or slapback Joels. And it's kind of like you do a forearm roll, oops, only instead of continuing the forearm roll, once the staff's rolling back towards you, you raise the arm so that the center point will come kind of down the armpit, across the chest, and then you can trap it with the opposite arm. So you'll want to be very comfortable with these before bringing the leg into it. So I start with the staff rolling down the left arm, just like a forearm roll. It pivots at the top of the hand or wrist to roll towards me. As soon as it's rolling towards me, I raise the left arm so that it'll come across the left armpit, across the chest, and then you can catch it in the right arm, kind of with your right arm out, like you're carrying a platter of food or something like that. So it look like this. And then to bring the leg into it, obviously you wouldn't have to catch it with the arm anymore, but I think it's just a really nice way to kind of drill it and to get comfortable with the pathway, you could say. I guess I should angle this up a little bit. Just slightly. Okay. So right there, I know it looks flip-flop because of the camera, so I'm going to turn around. Right there where it's coming across the chest towards the right arm. Instead of catching it with the right arm, we're going to catch it with the leg. And I bring it almost like I'm doing a figure four with the leg. So I'm going to raise my right foot so that the center point can go basically straight from the abdomen, ooh, missed it, to the right foot in that figure four. So the center point goes from the abdomen, almost, I guess, to the hip even, from the hip to kind of the inside or top of the right foot in that figure four shape, almost like you're about to trap it here. Only then, as soon as you get the contact or the center point to make contact with the right foot, you want to raise the foot, extend the leg out so that the center point can roll up the leg. And I guess there's another prerequisite here, because as soon as it's rolling up the leg, I take the contact point or the center point with the top of the right hand and come into a minimal Steve. But that's like an optional exit. You could really exit it however the heck you want. Something like that. That was a little sloppy. There it is. And yeah, this has definitely become one of my favorite tricks, like a real crowd pleaser, whether it's a non-flow artist audience or a flow artist audience. They're always like, what? And I live for those kinds of tricks. Ooh, missed the minimal Steve. I'll quickly go over it again, facing the same way, just because even though you can see better if I'm turned around, I feel like it's harder to learn. So coming into that forearm roll trap thingy or slap back Joel, as soon as you get the center point to roll across the chest, down the abdomen, down to the hip, you'll raise the right foot up near the thigh, like you're making a figure four, so that hopefully the center point will drop onto the inner right foot. And as soon as center point drops onto the foot or leg, you want to extend that leg out and raise it so that the center point can start to roll up the right leg. You could probably find something crazy from there too, but with balance and the movement of the staff and everything, I just take the contact point onto the right hand from there. And it's kind of like you're bringing the right foot from a figure four to out and then to the right to kind of bring it into the minimal Steve. So from the slap back Joel, center point lands on the inner foot or even the inner like kind of ankle. As soon as you got it there, extend the leg up and then out to the right so that the center point is rolling towards you. Up the right leg, sneak the right hand underneath the center point. Minimal Steve is like my favorite exit I found out of it, but I've definitely accidentally done some other exits out of it too, like just coming into like a kind of a cage thingy. Ooh. Okay, one more time from a forwards view. That wasn't going to be it. That wasn't it either. Third try. Whew. And yeah, balance is definitely a thing with this one too. I know balance isn't for everyone, and that's why I always go back to yoga. And I know some people do not like doing yoga, and I'm like, I'm with you. I don't like doing yoga either. I only do it because it makes tricks more accessible. And it kind of comes from tree pose. It's like you're in tree pose. Only you don't got to bring the foot all the way to the inner thigh. You're just bringing it towards the inner thigh to catch the center point, and then forward and out. I almost looked like a dancer when I did that. And see, there's a couple more people in here too. If any of y'all want me to go over any trick or anything, feel free to drop it in the chats. We've got like 5 minutes left, but I don't mind going over if there's anything that y'all want to learn, or if you have anything else you wanted to learn too, Dana. I appreciate you jumping in the chat and going back and forth with me. It always makes these live streams a lot funner. I feel like the first one, I had more people to go back and forth with, and the second one there was less, so I was just kind of going off of my notes, which I still have fun doing it anyways. But yeah, it's definitely funnest when I kind of got something to go off of. Otherwise, I feel like I go into almost tutorial mode without any kind of stopping or feedback. There were a couple of other things I had written down too. I'm glad too. Super stoked. I feel like we've been internet friends for a while, so I'm always happy to hang with people that I've kind of just followed on Instagram or Facebook for forever. And hopefully we get to jam at a festival or sometime, or yeah, a camping event or something. I wanna set something like that up where just rent out like a whole campsite. The only downside is that I don't know if we'd be able to do fire. At least might get in trouble if we do, but we'll figure that part out later. Let's see, if nobody else has anything, I'm going to quickly go over one more because I did jump in a little bit late too. It's something that I learned from the wizard, Jed Fowler, who's also just like one of the goats when it comes to Dragonstaff tech. His understanding of the prop is like, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's on another level. And floats are something like this. But if you add in a little turn with it, they look like this. Woo, which is another one of those tricks that I don't see too often in the States. I definitely see people like Jed and Fabio and stuff doing it. But I don't think it's too hard to access. He actually has a tutorial for it on YouTube too, which is how I learned it. But I think a nice way to kind of come into it is from pendulums. If you know your pendulums, I like to do the pendulums basically by starting with the staff rolling down the hands, and then right side's my dominant side. So I bring the right side of the staff up and over to the left, and then it won't roll for very long, obviously, because of gravity, and I have the right hand over the top of the staff. So as soon as it's going to drop, quickly go back over to the right, kind of make a pendulum back and forth with the staff. And this is a nice kind of a prerequisite for floats, I guess you could say. And it's a whole lot of kind of, what would you call this, like finger walking, like kind of hand assist with the roll to keep the staff rolling. So I'm definitely using my fingers a lot just to keep the staff rolling. And then to start to turn it into a float, as soon as you bring the staff up and over to the other side, instead of keeping the hand over the top of the staff, you bring the hand under the staff, which for whatever reason, I don't know how it works, but it works. Oh, perfect. Yeah, I think pendulums are super fun and underused too. I don't know why. I don't think they're like the hardest trick, but I don't think they're harder than a chi roll. Chi rolls were so frustrating for me to learn in the beginning, but pendulums, it kind of makes sense. So to start to turn it into a float, for whatever reason, when you bring your hand underneath the staff, of course, it's going to want to drop off the other side. I don't know why it works, but it works. If you raise the hand up and then back down, it gives you a little more time for some reason. I'm sure Jed could explain why. So as soon as I bring this right side of the staff up and over to the left, I bring my right back of the hand underneath the staff, and then this is where it becomes a float. I raise the right hand up and back down, and then swing it back up and over to the right. And that part you got to be really quick about. I'd say that's probably the most difficult part about this trick is once you get it to float, back down, quickly bringing the staff back over to the other side, and you kind of got to sneak the arm or hand underneath that side of the staff. And when you come to that high point, I have the staff still at the top of my hand or back of the hand. And as soon as I start to lower it, I kind of use, I sometimes flip my hand back to the palm side, just so that I can swing this side of the staff that came over to my left, back over to my right. And at first, when I was learning these, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool, but really difficult. Yay. Yeah, like I said, I haven't seen really anyone do these other than Jed and Fabio and Brett Starr, who are all kind of on the other side of the world. But yeah, when I was learning them, I was kind of like, okay, it's different, but it's really difficult for how cool it looks. Well, there goes the staff. But once I turned with it, I was like, okay, now I like these a lot. So as soon as, let's see, what side do I turn to? I'm going to turn to my right. As soon as you get it at that high point of the float, if you're doing it on your right hand, you would turn to your right and do a 180. And for whatever reason, once you do that, well, for one, the staff changes from rolling towards you when you're in the float. As soon as you turn around, it's rolling away from you. So that's always really nice. But it also almost feels like a bridge or something where it's a lot easier to keep it rolling. And I'm not doing that tricky part where I got to bring it back over to my right side. And instead, I do the float and I can just bring both hands underneath it. So right side of the staff comes up over to the left. Staff's on the back of the hand as I raise that end of the staff up. And as soon as I have the staff raised up, I can turn to my right so that the staff goes over me. And I do a 180 so that when I land, the staff's rolling away from me down the hands. Floats. And of course, you'd reverse all that for the opposite side, but since we're running out of time, I'll just quickly go over. We're doing the opposite side. Left hand or left side of the staff would come up over to the right. You float the staff up. And as soon as you have the staff raised, if you're using your left hand, you could turn to your left. And it's nice to know both sides just so that you can go back and forth between the two. So right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand. And I really like these two because even though it's like you're on one side of the staff should want to drop, but for whatever reason, that turnaround, that 180, keeps the staff level and keeps that one end from falling. So it feels very wizardy. So big shout out to Jed Fowler for posting a tutorial on these on YouTube. If you want to go over it more, or if you're not getting it still, anybody who may be watching this later too, definitely look up on YouTube Jed Fowler, JEDFOWLER, floats tutorial, because that's where I learned it from. Yeehaw. And okay, we went over a little bit. I had a long couple of days, so I'm gonna bring it to an end here. I spun some fire for a dispensary last night pretty late, and then had to get up at 6 a.m. to do training till 3 p.m. to be a school bus driver. And then yeah, I drove like 45 minutes back home and jumped on the stream. So I'm probably due for a shower and a nap, but thank you all so much for dropping in. Thank you extra to you, Dana, for chiming in and going back and forth with me here. It's been fun. And yeah, hopefully I do still want to do more of these in the future once I get my new work schedule. I don't know what that's going to be. So I don't know when I'll be able to do another one, but as soon as I get the schedule, I'm definitely going to do them more because they're too much fun not to. But yeah, as much as I never want to end these things, I think that is going to do it. Thank you, thank you. Much love. You have a great weekend as well. And yeah, likewise, great to connect. Like I said, always fun getting to hang more with my friends from the internet beyond just Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been fun. Have a lovely weekend, and yeah, hopefully we get to hang again soon. Bye.